to the Soul and Wonder podcast. This is episode 60, and we're really excited to start something new by bringing video to the podcast. We think that's going to provide a lot of really wonderful energy, and we're really thrilled to have Jeff Chilton with us on our new adventure with video podcasting. And so Jeff, he studied ethno-mycology at the University of Washington in the late 60s, and in 1973 he began a 10-year career as a large-scale commercial mushroom grower, a founder of Myco Media, which sponsored 4 mushroom conferences from 1979 to 1985. Jeff is the co-author of The Mushroom Cultivator, published in 1983. And in 1989, Jeff established Nammex, the first company to supply medicinal mushroom extracts to the nutritional supplement industry. And in 1997, he organized the first organic certification workshop for mushroom production in China. Wow, Jeff, this is all really super
pretty
incredible.
Awesome stuff.
And we're really glad to have you. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
And he's in British Columbia right now, where the mushrooms are plentiful. Is that right?
Oh, they are just popping up everywhere. I guess you could say they're mushrooming right now.
I love it. I love it. So you've clearly been involved in the medicinal mushroom world for quite some time now, going over 40 years. So how did you get into this mushroom business?
Well, I was studying ethno-mycology at the University of Washington, and I grew up in Seattle, and it's just an evergreen state. It rains all the time. It's the perfect mushroom climate. So mushrooms were everywhere. And I got into hunting wild mushrooms at an early age. And then in university, I started to study them along with my major in anthropology. And one of the things I was studying was the use of mushrooms worldwide by native cultures, not just for food, but also in shamanic practices. And you're probably well aware the 60s was full of shamanic practices. And at any rate, after I graduated university, there's not a lot you do with a degree in anthropology. So my mycology professor suggested that I go 60 miles down the road to the only mushroom farm in Washington State, which I did. I got a job there, and I stayed there for the next 10 years. And for 10 years, I literally was living with mushrooms.
Wow.
That's incredible. And I just find this field so fascinating. As a young amateur herbalist, I've just really taken to the fact of how powerful these mushrooms have really been as a part of our lives, but as well as, how I've seen it transform the lives of others. And it's interesting because in the herbal world and in the supplement industry, you see waves, right? They hit these peaks where it's like, oh, mushrooms is the next best thing. And then you have turmeric is the best thing and whatever they can get their hands on. But, as you mentioned, ancient cultures have been using medicinal mushrooms for thousands of years for not only healing, but also spiritual practices and everything else. So how have you seen this field transform since you first began 40 plus years ago?
Well, when I started growing mushrooms on this farm, it was we were producing agaricus mushrooms, which you probably know is the button mushroom. You see it in your supermarkets, and at the time it was interesting because classical nutritionists looked at mushrooms and said, "Oh, mushrooms, there's nothing there. It's maybe it tastes good, but the reason they said that was because mushrooms don't have any calories." And so for a nutritionist, if a food doesn't have calories, they're like, it's a non-food, right? Well, today it's like low-cal foods are more accepted, right? But it turns out mushrooms actually have a great nutritional profile. They've got a good level of protein, 20 to 40% of high-quality protein. They're full of carbohydrates, good carbohydrates, like the beta-glucans that are in there. And they've got some good B vitamins as well. They've got riboflavin, niacin. So it's a very healthy food. and plus it's got these beta glucans in its cell walls that have immunological activity. So in a sense, I really look at mushrooms as kind of like one of the premier, what we call today a nutraceutical, or what you could almost think of as food as medicine. And isn't that what we're all looking for? Food as medicine?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You would hope. I hope more and more people jump on that train.
Yeah, just don't go into a normal grocery store.
Right, exactly. And you kind of touched on there's obviously a wide variety of mushrooms. You've got food, mushrooms that we like to eat and put in our soups, and you also have medicinal mushrooms, and you have psychoactive mushrooms. And I'm wondering, what are medicinal mushrooms and their primary uses?
Well, a lot of what's really great is a lot of the premier edible mushrooms are also medicinal. So, for example, shiitake or maitake or lion's mane. And what was really fortunate for me is at this mushroom farm I worked on, we had a Japanese scientist there. So back in the 70s, while we were growing millions of pounds of button mushrooms, he was there researching and growing shiitake, oyster mushroom, and enoki-take. So I was exposed to these other mushrooms, and that exposure, which was really what led me to the whole medicinal side of things, because basically in North America or Europe, no one was talking about medicinal mushrooms, right? But in Asia, that's where they've been using mushrooms for thousands of years in traditional Chinese medicine. So really, because of Dr. Urayama, who was a very interesting man, and actually growing these other mushrooms at that farm, that's where medicinal mushrooms sort of came into the picture for me. And so, it's kind of funny because while I was there, I enjoyed what I was doing so much, but everybody else there who was working on this farm just wanted to get off the farm. It was like farm labor, the lowest of any sort of labor, and everybody wanted to. And when they saw me there, like at lunchtime, reading about mushrooms and mushroom growing and that kind of thing, they just thought, man, you are nuts. We want to get out of here. I mean, I think about it for a second, like on farms, and certainly on this farm, we're making, because agaricus grows on a compost, we're making 320 tons of fresh compost every week.
Wow.
Well, a barnyard and composting has certain odors that come with it, and those odors are powerful. And so a lot of people who aren't used to the countryside, man, when they smell those odors, they're like, oh, man, I got to get out of here. So working on a mushroom farm around all those odors, for most people, it's just like, oh no, this is like the end of the world here. I don't want to work it. But for me, it was just fine. I mean, I worked in there making the compost and growing the mushrooms, so it was not a problem. But in terms of your question, you're talking about the medicinal mushrooms and all. Well, here's really what's interesting about a mushroom. The cell wall is made up of what are called beta glucans. So every mushroom has these beta glucans in its cell walls. And the beta glucans are what scientists have told us are the medicinal component of mushrooms. Now, mushrooms have a number of different compounds in them that are beneficial, but the beta glucans are the key. And every mushroom has these in its cell wall. And the wonderful thing for us is that some of these edible mushrooms, like maitake, like shiitake, like lion's mane, wonderful edible mushrooms, but they also have these beta glucans that are more active than others. And that's really one of the keys, is that not all beta glucans have the same level of activity.
Mm-hmm. And what are beta glucans good for?
Well, what mushrooms are good for and what beta glucans are good for, primarily they will activate immune cells. So when we eat the beta glucans, when we eat the mushrooms, those beta glucans go down into our lower intestine. We don't digest mushrooms in our stomach, really. They go through our stomachs, they go into our intestine. Then they hit receptor sites. Those receptor sites in our small intestine, those sites will then activate natural killer cells, macrophages. So that's really what they're doing. They are activating immune cells. So this also is something that happens with what are called adaptogens. I mean, not that specifically, but a mushroom is a premier adaptogen. Mushroom is something and an adaptogen, I look at that as something that is geared towards prevention. A lot of people go, oh, a mushroom's going to cure your cancer, something like that. You know what? The best way to think about medicinal mushrooms is that they're something you take as a preventative measure. They're going to be there. They're in the background. They're working. Don't expect mushrooms to work overnight. You're not going to take the mushroom and tomorrow you're going, oh, my cold's gone. This is great. Doesn't work that way. I see some reviews sometimes for mushroom products on Amazon, and that's what people are saying, and I'm like, holy smokes, that is not how they work, I mean, you guys have probably seen those kind of reviews too, and as an herbalist, you might go, oh Lord, please help me out here, right?
Well,
but
oh, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, so that's really the first thing to know about a medicinal mushroom is that they are chock full of very highly active beta glucans, and those beta glucans activate immune cells. And the way they talk about this is they modulate our immune system, which means that as needed, they are going to be stimulating and producing these immune cells as we need them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I really appreciate your detailed explanation on that. And so, I was going to say before, it's interesting the perspective that we often have in the Western world in regards to the effectiveness, and we measure effectiveness by how quick things work. But in the natural world, it's a slow, organic process that takes place, and that we have to really cultivate a relationship with the herbs, in this case mushrooms, and take it over time, as you mentioned. And
not to mention the holistic approach as well.
Absolutely, addressing all aspects of the being, body, mind, and soul. But one of our favorite mushrooms that we use on the regular, and we got some in the fridge, I should have brought some out for this interview, is some chaga tea. We get the full chaga chunks and really simmer those down nicely, and we love our chaga tea.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome. You know what? And what I love too is I love it when people can actually get the mushroom itself, like the chaga, for example. And certainly people who are good at foraging can go out in certain areas and they can harvest things like reishi. They can find lion's mane. They can find chaga, maitake, back where you guys are. We don't have maitake really out here in the West Coast, but where you guys are, you've got maitake. So you can go out and as herbalists, what could be better than finding your own herbs and making up your own tinctures and things like that? And with something like chaga or reishi, which are, woody, like chagas are really just, kind of really gnarly, right? Mm-hmm. But reishi's woody. We're not going to put that into our diet. So what you do is you go ahead and you decoct it and you basically simmer it down, get it into a concentrate. You can stick it in the fridge. You can pull out X amount daily or however, drink it as a tea or when you want it. It's just a great way to do it.
What's your opinion on, so some people might be wondering, they might have never heard of mushrooms like the ones that you're speaking about, and they might be wondering, so wait a minute, do I just find these mushrooms and cook them up and eat them, or do I eat them raw? Or how do I know when to make tea? What would your thoughts be on that?
Well, the first thing I tell people is before you even think about supplementation, if you have access to shiitake or maitake or lion's mane or some of these mushrooms in your markets, put mushrooms into your diet. I eat mushrooms at least 3 times a week, and I don't mess around with, okay, a couple of mushrooms here. I weighed up a fresh agaricus, a fresh button mushroom, about a medium size. It weighed 40 grams. I thought, wow, that's really heavy for that one mushroom. And I thought, here I am. I probably eat 10 of those in a sitting, no problem.
Wow.
And I thought, am I really eating a pound of mushrooms just like that? But for me, seriously, I mean, it's so easy, whether it's agaricus or shiitake or maitake, to eat, say, 200 grams in a sitting, which is 10 dried grams. I mean, think about that for a minute. 10 dried grams of any herb is a lot of herb. So the first thing I tell people is, look, get mushrooms into your diet. They're a fabulous food. You're not only going to get good nutrients from them, but you're going to get these medicinal benefits as well. And certainly, again, shiitake, maitake, lion's mane. Trying to think of another choice edible. We don't have cordyceps fresh, which is too bad. But yeah, get them into your diet first, and then think about supplementation if you want to incorporate them further. But make them a regular feature of what you eat. And again, this gets back, in China, food is medicine. This is just a standard concept that's been around for thousands of years. In fact, it's interesting because they have some restaurants over there that actually go into these restaurants, and every dish that they serve you is considered nothing but medicinal, whether it be herbs or foods or whatever. That's what they serve you there.
And does cooking these mushrooms cook out any of the nutritional value, or does it enhance it in some way?
Well, you know what? I think that cooking is important. You're not going to lose any nutrient. It's not really going to destroy any of the nutrients. Cooking, I would say, is what you should do. And what I would say too for people, you know how a lot of people think of mushrooms and they think, oh man, those soggy, slimy things. You think I really want to eat those things? Well, hot pan, a really hot frying pan, your favorite oil in there, throw them in, cook them, again, hot. I like to brown them up. So when I cook them hot enough that they'll get nice and brown on the side, and then I'll kind of flip them over. And so both sides are nicely browned. I like to cook them a little longer. But you see, when you cook them in a cool pan, what happens is all the water just comes right out of them. And the next thing you know, they're sitting cooking in all this water, and the water's gone out of them, and they're just a soggy, slimy mess. So you really need to get them in a hot pan. In China, everything is kind of cooked that way in a very hot wok or something like that. But that's the way to cook a mushroom. And definitely, I think cooked mushrooms are the way to go in terms of the edibles. Now you guys are doing the other side of it, which is you can take a medicinal mushroom like chaga or reishi, and you can decoct it. And with those two, what I recommend is like, for example, the reishi mushroom, very woody, very hard to do anything with. I mean, there were times when I would take a hatchet to a reishi mushroom because you can't cut it with a knife. It's wood. And it's the same with a chaga. What are you going to do with a chaga? You probably put it in a bag and beat it, right? Unless you buy the chunks, right? But so you put it into a pot of water, and you cook it for maybe 3 hours, and then you pour it off, put in more water, cook it some more. You can cook it 2, 3, 4 times until the water stops turning color. And then you've gotten everything you need out of that. So, and then of course, again, you can just stick it in the fridge and take it out as you want it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great way to do it, and something that we just really enjoy. And it's funny because I know a lot of people, if they taste something, they ask, how do these mushrooms actually taste? How do the teas actually taste? Well, it's something like anything else you adapt to, but I really have come to really love the taste of, chaga specifically, and all the other mushrooms we've had as well.
Yeah, well, you know what, and that's what's so cool about the mushrooms is that each one has its unique flavor. One of the ones that I take daily is reishi, and one of the things that we produce is we produce a very strong reishi extract. And my company, we sell nothing but powdered extracts. We don't sell tinctures or fluids of any sort. It's powdered extract. So this reishi extract is a 16-to-1 strength extract, and so it's very strong. And reishi's really bitter. I mean, bitter as anything you've tasted. In fact, we do what we call a reishi challenge, where we have some, there's products out there that actually are called mycelium, and they grow them on grain, and they taste very bland. And we just tell people, okay, taste one of these products. They taste it and they go, oh yeah, kind of sweet, kind of bland, yeah. And then I say, okay, try this reishi extract, and they're just like, oh my God, it just gets into their mouth, and it's just like so powerful, and they just go, this tastes so medicinal, and it does. And so I take that and I put it into my coffee in the morning. That's my favorite herb, actually, is coffee. So in the morning with my coffee, I don't sweeten it, and then I just add maybe half a teaspoon of some reishi extract, and that just is as a secondary bitter note. And I'm just like, yeah, this is great. For most people, they would prefer reishi in a capsule or something else. Maybe a tea, it'd be a pretty bitter tea, but if you like bitters, it's fine. It's got its own special bitterness. But like if like when we do the reishi challenge, it'll be a powder, right? And sometimes people will take a little bit too much, and next thing you know, they're making a face, just an amazing face, and going, does anybody have any water?
That's great.
You were talking about how you sell powdered forms of these mushrooms and things. So how do our listeners know how, like, when they're purchasing, how do they know when they're purchasing a quality mushroom supplement?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about the supplement market, because it's really an interesting phenomena that's happened, is that mushrooms, and remember, I'm a mushroom grower. I know how to grow mushrooms. I know the economics of it and all of this. And what's interesting is that you can't actually grow mushrooms in the United States and sell them as supplements. You can sell them as food. But remember, a mushroom, like most vegetables, is 90% water. So all of a sudden you've got this mushroom that you've been selling for $5 a pound. You dry it out, and now you have to get $50 a pound for that same, just a pound of dried mushroom. The economics of selling that as a supplement just don't work. Mm-hmm. So what's happened is that companies in the United States, what they do is they will grow mycelium. And let me just give you a brief overview of the life cycle here. We start, mushrooms don't have seeds, they have spores. Mm-hmm. So a spore will fly, a mushroom will produce a spore, it'll fly out into the environment, it'll land somewhere. If it lands in a place where it's compatible, when conditions are right, it will germinate into a very, very fine filament called a hypha. And if you have multiple spores that germinate, and these hypha are in the same place, they will come together and they will form a network, and that network is called mycelium. And this mycelium, it's really cool. The mycelium is underground. It's in a piece of wood. We normally don't see it, but it's there. It's all throughout the ground. And what it does is it's breaking down organic matter, which allows it to continue to grow, and it's also amassing these nutrients so that when the fall comes, especially here, it rains, it gets a little bit cooler, and now that mycelium that's been just like having a great time growing out there in the summer temperatures, it's like, wow, this is wonderful, all this food, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, it's cold. It stops growing, and it produces a mushroom.
Wow.
And now that mushroom will come up, it will mature, and it will produce all of these spores, and now we've got a completion of this life cycle. Now what some companies do is they will grow that mycelium on sterilized grain in a laboratory, and at the end of the process what they'll do is they will basically slice it, dry it, and grind it to a powder, but they don't remove the grain. So the grain is still with this product. And what I did in 2015 is I did a very big study with 95 products, 40 of which were these U.S. manufactured myceliated grain products. And then I did dried mushrooms, I did mushroom extracts. And what I found in my testing was that those products were mostly starch from all the grain.
Wow.
And see, here's the issue. The issue is that a mushroom doesn't have any starch. And what's interesting about a mushroom is that, some people say, oh yeah, mushrooms kind of like humans. Well, the kingdom of fungi sits between plants and animals. It's right in there, and fungi do not produce starch. What do they produce? They produce glycogen, just like us. So, and they breathe just like us. They're like breathing in oxygen, taking and pushing out carbon dioxide. So in that sense, people say, well, we're very close to fungi. In that sense, yes, we are. But the issue being that fungi don't have starch. So when you've got a mushroom product, if there's starch in there, something is wrong. And so what happens is these myceliated grain products end up being 30 to 60% starch and very low levels of beta-glucan, like down as low as, like on average, they turned out to be about 6% beta-glucan. A mushroom is 25 to 60% beta-glucan. A reishi mushroom or a turkey tail mushroom are 50% beta-glucan. And the amount of glycogen they have is maybe 1 or 2%. So these products are the exact opposite of what you expect to get in a mushroom product. And the issue is, we're talking about, well, how do you know what's a good product? The issue is that on the label, it will say reishi mushroom, shiitake mushroom, chaga mushroom, when in fact, it's not even a mushroom. There's a picture of a mushroom, it says mushroom, it's not even a mushroom. It is this mycelium that's been grown on this sterile grain. And just to give you an idea, so you can picture this, do you know what tempeh is?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you know what it is?
Yeah, soybean fermented.
Soybean, right?
Okay. Do you know what they ferment it with?
No. We're
Guess
vegan,
what?
so I'm surprised that we don't know this answer.
Well, guess what? They ferment it with a fungus.
Ah.
What you are actually eating is fungal mycelium. So the way they produce tempeh is they cook the soybean, they put this fungus on it, and actually they have spores, and they inoculate this cooked soybean with these fungal spores, and this particular fungus is really, really fast growing. I mean, it covers those soybeans in 2 to 3 days, and it covers it with white mycelium. So when you eat tempeh, what you're actually eating, you're eating mycelium on a cooked grain. Well, here's the issue. Is that a food or is it a supplement? Can you imagine just grind that up and you're going like, okay, here's a mushroom product for you.
Right.
No, it's not.
Right.
It's actually, you're used to, in herbs, plant parts, right? There's a root. There's maybe leaves. There's fruit. Well, that's the issue here, is that the mycelium is a plant part, it's not a mushroom, and the grain is definitely not what you're looking for when you're looking for a mushroom product. So you have to really be careful, because when you're looking at the shelf at all those products that say mushroom and they have a picture of a mushroom, turn it over. If the company is ethical, you'll look on it and it will say mycelium. And in the other ingredients, it might say myceliated rice or myceliated oats or myceliated grain, but not say that. So a lot of products will not reveal the fact that they've got all of this grain in there. And listen, I go to a show every year called Paleo FX, and there's a lot of people out there that are like, grains. Sorry, we don't eat grains. Okay, fine. They come to my booth and they say, oh yeah, all mushrooms. I love mushrooms. I'm taking this great mushroom product. I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's great. What's the brand? They tell me the brand, and then I'm going like, I hate to tell you this, but that brand is mostly grain powder. And then they're like, shocked. Absolutely shocked, because like I say, most companies won't even tell you that. And not only that, a lot of people don't pay attention to supplement facts and that little thing underneath in the fine print that says other ingredients that might tell you that, not always, but might. So that's something you really have to be aware of when you're out there in the supplement market. Now, when you're buying chaga chunks, no problem, right?
Mhm.
You can look at them. You know what chaga looks like. You know, it's that nice cinnamon color with that black rind on it, and yeah, it's all good. Or if you've got an actual reishi mushroom in your hand, yeah, reishi mushroom. But you know, supplements, they're in capsules, they're powders. It's a totally different thing. How do you really know?
Well, thank you for explaining that in so
Yeah, and
much
breaking
detail.
that down, I think that's really important for people to understand because, again, the supplement industry, as many people know, it is very. I mean, it's a $1 billion industry, and so people will try to capitalize any way they can on that industry, and so those types of products are sitting on the shelves, and it's good to have that awareness around that. So that was a great, very good, detailed explanation of that, and so. Now, let's get back to the pure form of mushrooms, the pure supplements that are actually out there. How important is it to actually buy organic mushrooms versus obviously ones that have been sprayed and everything else?
Well, you know what? I'm a real believer in organic certification of vegetables or fruits or whatever it is. My company's been certified since 1992. And once I realized this whole issue of growing mushrooms in North America and it being difficult for supplements, well, you know, I traveled all throughout China in the 1990s, and it was just absolutely incredible. I visited farms, I visited factories, I visited research institutes, processors. It was amazing. Today in China, they produce 87% of the world's mushrooms.
Wow.
87%. So with this realization, I just basically went, okay, look, I'm going to have to source my mushrooms in China. So in 1997, I went to China with OCIA, a major organic certifier in the United States. We organized the very first mushroom certification workshop in China, 1997. So 2 or 3 years later, we had organic production coming out of China, and we're being certified over there by German certifiers. And then I've got my own certifier over here. Every single lot of product that we make is tested for pesticides and fungicides. It's tested over there, heavy metals, before it even leaves China and comes over here, and then we retest it again. So you know, for me, let's face it. How many chemicals are we all ingesting on a regular basis that we didn't ask anybody to give us or make us ingest it if we want to eat certain foods or drink certain drinks? So I'm a total believer in organic foods and beverages. I think it's really important. And you know, the one thing about organics is more than just those chemicals. It's also the way you treat the land and all of this production out there where they're spraying chemical fertilizers and everything. It's just depleting the topsoil. It's contaminating our rivers, our lakes. I mean, it is really, to me, it's a huge tragedy, and it's something that the more organic production that we can get, the better off we're all going to be.
Very well put.
Yes. Thank you for saying all that.
And so, what sort of updates do you have now? What's going on with your work right now? What current projects do you have going on, and any other updates you'd like to share with us?
Well, you know what? There's some pretty cool things going on right now. I don't know if have you heard at all about mushrooms and vitamin D?
A little bit, but you can explain a little bit more if you'd like.
Well, you know what? It's interesting because mushrooms actually don't have much vitamin D in them, but they have a compound in them called ergosterol. And ergosterol is a precursor to vitamin D. So when you expose a mushroom to UV, like put it out in the sun, that ergosterol turns into vitamin D. Now, if you're a vegan or you know a vegetarian, and you're like, I want to have vitamin D, but it comes from an animal, which vitamin D3 does. This is actually vitamin D that you're getting from a mushroom. You're getting it from a non-animal source. And that's something that we're working on right now and hoping to have a vitamin D mushroom product out next year. We've been working on this actually for a number of years. It's just taken a while to get to the point where we've got enough to put out a product and offer it to other companies. But to me, that again is one of those things of kind of like, and even with your mushrooms, you can take your mushrooms and like in the summertime or something, and before you eat them that night, you can slice them up, stick them out in the sun, and they'll be sitting out there for 15 to 30 minutes, and there will be a lot of vitamin D produced, 100, 200 IUs of vitamin D produced in those mushrooms. And of course, the more surface area that you can expose, so the thinner you slice those for the vitamin D content, the more vitamin D you'll get out of it. Now just one thing I like to say, I don't like to slice when I'm cooking mushrooms. I don't like to slice them too thin. But in terms of vitamin D, that's what you would do to expose as much of the surface of that as possible to get those higher in vitamin D. The other interesting compound that you might hear about in the years to come is a compound called ergothioneine. Mm-hmm. Ergothioneine is a strong antioxidant that only occurs in a few foods, mushrooms being one of them, and it's actually something that they find in a lot of different places in the human bodies. We don't produce ergothioneine. They find it in a lot of places, and what happens is that as we age, they start to see less of this ergothioneine. And so they're actually thinking that may be something that if we can maintain more ergothioneine, that it might be an anti-aging compound. And actually, they're even considering it might be a new vitamin, wow, which would be really cool. And so we're also we've been measuring ergothioneine in our extracts now for a year and a half, because one of the things that I truly believe in is analyzing our products to guarantee that we actually have the medicinal compounds that are supposed to be there. I've been in this whole industry since 1989, and in the very beginning, people used to just like basically harvest leaves of this and leaves of that, grind them up to a powder, put them in capsules, and sell them, right? And say, okay, take 2 capsules a day. Well, 2 capsules a day of a lot of herbs, you'd be like, what? That's not going to be medicinal, right? You need to have a certain amount of the actives in there, and nobody would be measuring that. So the industry's come a long way, but there's still a lot of those products out there. I truly believe in the what it's been used for historically, like traditional Chinese medicine. That's where we'll go, okay, what are the major mushrooms that have been used medicinally? And then I'll go, okay, let's go out to the scientific world and find out what scientists have been doing, and can they confirm this? And then if there's a strong body of scientific evidence, I'll go, okay, this is a good medicinal mushroom. So with certain of these compounds, like the beta-glucans, like ergosterol, which is this fungal sterol that turns into vitamin D, like ergothioneine, we measure for those, because that way we can build up a profile where when we sell a product, we can say, look, here it is. This product has all of those things that make a mushroom medicinal. And that's what's important. I don't want to be selling, and there's too much of this stuff out there where people are selling stuff that's just, it may as well be placebo, and unfortunately, it doesn't matter what business, what type of market, or what types of products, there's always going to be those products out there. So one of the things that I really feel strongly about is, look, it's important for us to validate verify and guarantee that what we're actually selling you is what we tell you it is, and that something that's going to provide you with the benefits that you expect.
Well, I'll tell you what, I know where we're getting our next mushroom supplement.
Yeah, well, yeah, and again, if you can get those like the chaga chunks, I love that. We sell a chaga product, but I tell people to look, if you have access to chaga chunks and you like to make up your own teas and stuff, do that. That is fantastic. And if you have mushrooms in your marketplace, medicinal mushrooms, buy them and eat them. Put them into your diet. Do that. Don't worry about the supplementation until you go, oh, I really like to have more of a reishi or a chog or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, that is the thing to do for sure.
Well, thank you so much for all of your wonderful information and some of those tips on mushrooms and vitamin D. That's really cool.
I'm definitely going to be having some mushroom soup this week. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. If you have shiitake in your marketplace, man, shiitake mushroom, my favorite.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where can our listeners follow you, keep up with your updates, and purchase any supplements if they're interested?
Well, you know what? My company primarily sells to other businesses, but we have a ton of great information, images on our website, nammex.com, Nammex.com. We also, because we have so many people calling us about where can we get your products, and it's like, well, you're a consumer, I'm sorry. We've also got a line of consumer products that we sell online that have our products. A lot of companies that buy from us, they will blend, they will formulate. So we've got our products out 100% just the mushrooms, nothing more. And that would be at realmushrooms.com.
I like it.
Love it.
Yeah, so do I.
Love it.
Well, Jeff, it's been a pleasure, and we really appreciate all of your expertise and knowledge, and for you sharing your wisdom after all of these years working in the field of medicinal mushrooms. It's been quite a pleasure.
Hey, my pleasure talking to you both, really.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. See you guys.
Bye.